Hey, this is Merri Maywether, and I am recording a story that I wrote for my Facebook group. And the way the story came about was I shared a video with them about two dogs that wandered around a hospital. It's been going viral. I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't, join my Facebook group, and then you will see it. And I said I promised to write a story. So finishing my computer. So here's the story, and I hope that one, you enjoy it, and two, if you do, I have several stories at Amazon. Author name Merri Maywether, and this will be one of several that I'm going to publish at the end of the year, a compilation of short stories. And this one is called Lost and Found. And here we go. Erin Thorne bobby pinned the stray piece of hair into her braid. She assessed the long twine of hair and frowned. Something was out of place. Where's the hairspray? Who knew where anything was? The hardest part about living in the new home she had was not remembering where she placed things. Her reflection shrugged and then brightened in recognition of the answer. The bottom drawer of the vanity. When she unpacked, Erin stored her hairspray in the drawer because it was big enough to hold the can. She sprayed the section of hair she had pinned and patted to deter any other escapees. Erin smiled at the finishing touches and motioned to return the can to the drawer. Just as she was about to set it down, a thought struck her. Hairs around her temple had a mind of their own, too. No matter how hard she tried to keep them in place, they strayed and floated above her head by the end of the day. Erin gave them an extra squirt of hairspray. First impressions are most important, she wagged her finger at the mirror. So please, stay put until we get home. An hour later, Erin's heart raced as she approached the door to the police station. Theodore and Stephen were out there somewhere. If it wasn't her first day of work, she'd have called out and continued her search for them. She took a deep breath to calm herself and opened the door to help. Surely someone on the other side of the door would have a solution to her problem. She expected to see a row of desks with people drinking coffee and filling out paperwork. That's how it was in the television programs. Instead, there was one person behind a glass window. From the foggy appearance of the glass, she guessed it was made of some sort of bulletproof synthetic material. Erin approached the window and waited for the person to address her. The man leaned down to speak into a microphone. You're here early. What can I help you with? I'm here to file a missing... She paused and restarted. My dogs are missing, and I wondered where I'd go to file a missing animal report. Did you call the animal shelter? That was the first place she called. Yes, I left a message on their machine. I just wanted to cover all options. Did someone steal your dogs? When they recruited her to work at the medical center, Jeff and Brianna assured her that the picturesque Paradise Hills was the perfect place for a single woman to live. The crime rate was low, and the members of the small community watched out for each other. With the main street looking like the cover of a romance novel, she believed them, which was why the man's question shocked Erin's senses. It never dawned on her that someone would steal her dogs. I hope not. Then why did you come here? Erin slid her business card in the slot at the bottom of the window. If someone called and reported two dogs wandering around town, I wanted you to know how to reach me. The police officer rolled his eyes. Yes, that's what we do in a police station, find missing dogs and call their owners. They are not just dogs, Erin asserted. They are my companions. Until this morning, they never strayed from my sight. She left out the part where they acquired the habit of sticking by her side after her loss of a fiancé left her at the altar a year ago. She squirmed under the assessing gaze from the man on the other side of the window. Look, apparently I came to the wrong place. Erin backed away from the conversation. I'm sorry I bothered you. Her day had not got off to a good start, and it looked like it was only getting worse. No problem. The man dismissed her with a wave. All the way to work, Erin replayed the conversation in her mind, except with every variation, she had a clever response to the police officer's abrupt behavior. When that didn't work, she took on a different perspective. Going to the police station was an unnecessary step, although it did provide her with the chance to take a different route to work. People waved at her as she drove by the park. Even though she didn't feel like it, Erin found herself smiling. The name Paradise Hills suited the town perfectly. Watch, Theodore and Stephen will be waiting for me at the door when I get home. At least that is how Erin hoped her day would end. She pulled into the parking space Brianna, the medical center's administrator, told her to use. Before she had time to turn off the engine, a man knocked on her window. Erin squeaked her surprise. She rolled down her window enough for the man's voice to pass through the gap. "This is reserved parking. You need to take your car someplace else." He tapped the badge on his uniform. He was security. Yes, it was reserved for her. "I know." Erin looked at the clock on her panel. It read 7:47. She had 13 minutes to get to Brianna's office. "Then get moving," he commanded. The man stepped away and crossed his arms in front of him. She had seen tree trunks smaller than his biceps. If he wasn't such an ogre, Erin would have found the man attractive. She motioned to speak. "I'm supposed to." The man with eyes the color of steel cut her off before she had the chance to finish her statement. He made a circular motion with his finger, saying, "Move the vehicle now, ma'am." She made a correction to her previous assessment. He was a pain in her back tire. By this point in time, two people stopped to observe the disruption. Erin took a deep breath and pulled her car out of the space. She'd deal with him later. Under her breath, Erin muttered unkind responses to the man while making her way to Brianna's office. Instead of finding Brianna, Jeff rounded the hall corner and greeted Erin. "Natalie told me what happened in the parking lot. I apologize for the confusion. We'll get things straightened out so it doesn't happen again." His greeting had her at a disadvantage. Who was Natalie? How did she know what happened in the parking lot? And did the woman have super skills? Erin had spent at most 10 minutes in the parking lot, yet Natalie had a chance to talk to Jeff and alert him to what happened. In response to her unspoken questions, Jeff replied, "Security cameras." Jeff's validation of her being in the right place settled Erin's nerves. Sure, the day got off to a bad start, but that didn't mean it had to stay there. Nolan isn't as bad as you probably think. He worked double so one of our other guards could take his mother to a cribbage tournament. You got caught in the last 10 minutes of his shift. There wasn't much she could say in response, so Erin nodded and let it go. Jeff turned and said, "Let's get started." He chattered about how people were looking forward to meeting Erin as they walked down the hall to her office. Erin took note of how the medical center was decorated. A montage of the various stages of the medical center lined the wall. Pictures of scenes around Paradise Hills decorated other walls. Embossed tags with the photographers' names hung below the pictures. When they reached their destination, Jeff held open the door for Erin. Bookshelves filled with medical encyclopedias and manuals lined the back wall, and a desk was placed in front of it. Through the drawn curtains, Erin caught a view of the Paradise Hills mountains. They were stunning. A long white garment embroidered with the sketch of the mountain and her name hung on a rack by the door. Jeff held the white lab coat open for Erin to step into. Erin slid her arm into the right sleeve, and Jeff circled around to help her into the left. "This makes it official. You are now ready to meet patients." The stitching was prominent enough for anyone who saw her to recognize that Erin was, in fact, a doctor. The responses varied when Jeff introduced Dr. Thorne to patients. Most were welcoming, but there were a few, "We'll see how long she sticks around." When they commented that she was too young, Erin winked as she said, "Thank you." She was almost 40. Irene Baldwin, a gentlewoman in her 60s who had the kindest smile, said, "I hope my son meets you before the other men figure out you're here." By this point in the day, the candid comments amused Erin. She grinned, thanked Irene for the compliment, and chatted her through the questions for her appointment. The conversations flowed smoothly, and Jeff suggested that Erin complete the appointment. With the captive audience, Irene talked about her son. He came back from Afghanistan recently. When Erin squeezed the bulb of the blood pressure cup, Irene pursed her lips. She waited for the band to release and picked up where she left off. "I was worried about him for a while. He went over with his best friend and came back alone." Nolan was quiet for a long time. Erin noted that Irene's blood pressure was a little higher than her normal readings. Jeff spoke through an improving grin. Normally Irene isn't as conversive during her appointments. With the detail recorded, Erin ended the appointment saying, "You're in good health, Ms. Baldwin." The older woman patted Erin's hand. "Oh, don't be so formal. Call me Irene." "Irene it is." Erin waved as she left the examining room. On the other side of the door, Jeff said, "She's taken a liking to you. That's a good sign. If you have Irene's approval, the rest of the town will follow." Jeff glanced at his watch. "That was our last appointment for the morning. You ready for some lunch?" "Sure." Erin's stomach grumbled. She spent her morning searching for Theodore and Stephen and forgot to eat breakfast. Much to her disappointment, when she peeked at her cell phone, there were no messages from either the police station or the animal shelter. Worry settled into her stomach and diminished her appetite. As they walked through the hall, Jeff reminded her of the names of the people they passed. Greg, he's the pediatric nurse. Then came Arya, she's the radiologist. Erin nodded her understanding and added, "She's been here for 3 years and is engaged to someone who works at the fire department." The names, the faces, and stories were beginning to gel and form a picture of the community where Erin chose to live. Bit by bit, comfort with her new life eased the tension caused by trying to remember so much. Brianna joined Jeff and Erin at a cafe next to the medical center. Over a lunch of meatball soup, Erin got the answers to the list of questions that grew over the course of the day. Yes, the people in the town leaned toward speaking with more honesty than necessary. She added another detail Erin hadn't expected to hear. "And half the town already knows what you've eaten for lunch." The police officer that didn't help Erin earlier in the day strolled into the cafe with another officer. He raised his chin toward Erin, and the other officer looked in her direction. Both men chuckled. "They're laughing at me," she grumbled to Brianna. "I went to the police station because my dogs are missing. Now they're making fun of me." "I doubt it. They get all kinds of calls," Jeff huddled and whispered. "Just last week, Alex Peters called because he found his wife with Hunter Miller. Alex told the police they needed to come to the house before he killed both Hunter and his wife." Erin covered her mouth to stifle the gasp. "Did they go?" "Yes. At midnight, you would have found half the police station with Alex at the coffee shack." Talk about supportive. Erin's opinion of the police officer softened. She still hadn't taken a liking to the man, but the wishes that he'd step barefoot in a puddle of mud faded. The door to the cafe opened to reveal the next customer. Irene appeared with a security guard from the hospital. Dressed in jeans and a t-shirt that would have been loose on a less muscular person, he seemed like a nice guy. Irene pointed at Erin and Jeff at the table. Through a slight grin, Erin said, "Uh-oh." Jeff turned around just as they reached the table. "Nolan! Irene! Good to see you!" Irene held out her hand to make the introduction. "This is Dr. Thorne." Nolan's face paled. "Dr. Thorne?" Erin wanted to say, "The kind that parks in the doctor's parking area," but she remained silent. Jeff moved his chair. Erin guessed it was so he didn't have to twist to see Nolan and Irene. "She started working at the medical center today." "Yes, we've already met." Nolan shoved his hands in his pockets. "You have?" Irene brightened. "Then you already know how nice she is." She patted Jeff's hand that was resting on the table. "Don't be offended when I say this, Dr. Gray. She has the kindest examining manners. My appointment was more like talking with a friend than someone who was trying to get information from me." None taken. The smile Jeff gave Erin expressed his sentiment. "See, I told you they'd like having you here." He spoke to Irene. "I'm glad your appointment with Dr. Thorne went so well." "We don't want to bother you while you're eating, Dr. Thorne." Nolan tapped at his mother's elbow. "I'm so hungry I could eat a bear." Irene beamed at her son. It was obvious to anyone that saw them together that Nolan was her pride and joy. She said, "I'll get some fries so you can eat half." And they were off. Before he bit into his sandwich, Jeff said, "In this town, things always have a way of working out. You won't have problems in the parking lot anymore." Erin reminded herself of Jeff's advice when she set out to find her dogs. Things have a way of working out. Just in case, she filled a Tupperware container with Theodore and Stephen's favorite meal, ground beef hash. She walked the tree-lined streets of Paradise Hills and asked her neighbors if they had seen a German shepherd wandering around with a bulldog. If she knew her pets as well as she suspected, they made friends with someone who liked to feed adorable dogs. An hour and 5,000 Fitbit steps later, Erin questioned the loyalty of her beloved pets. What could be so important they'd forget they had a human mother that loved them? She fed them tasty, healthy food. She played with them and took them for walks. When she had to work, she left the TV on the Animal Planet station. They had their own bedroom, for Pete's sake. What more could a dog want or need? She sat on her couch and talked away her sadness. They're probably in someone's house and couldn't open the door. Her cell phone vibrated in her pocket. She took out the phone and saw it wasn't a number she recognized, but it did have a Paradise Hills prefix. Dr. Thorne speaking. The person on the other end cleared their throat. Hello? It sounded like he was reading something. Dr. Erin Thorne? Erin straightened. Yes, how can I help you? Actually, I called to help you. You came into the office? Oh, you came into the police station this morning to file a report about some missing dogs? Are they okay? The eagerness to hear the good news propelled Erin to stand. She searched for her keys so she could drive to the police station and get her babies. Yes, they are fine, the man said. Apparently, they were getting acquainted with the town. Someone brought them from the medical center. The medical center? The one where I work? Yes, that's the one. Erin grabbed the Tupperware and car keys off the counter. I'll be right down to get them. For the 10-minute drive to the police station, she tried to figure out where else the dogs had been for the rest of the day. She also hoped they hadn't gotten into any trouble or eaten food that would disrupt their stomachs. Excited to be reunited with her fur babies, Erin rushed into the door of the police station. Theodore and Stephen barked and came out of a room that Erin hadn't noticed the first time she visited the station. Theodore circled around her and wagged his tail. Stephen jumped up and tapped her knee with his nose. Forgetting where she was, Erin knelt on the ground and hugged her dogs. I have been so worried about you. Where have you been? Theodore nuzzled into her neck and howled softly. Yes, Mommy missed you too. Erin pulled the Tupperware food from her tote. I made you some dinner. Theodore talked at her, and all was good in Erin's world. When she overheard the police officer say, I wish somebody loved me the way she loves those dogs, Erin remembered that other people were in the room. She straightened her back and stood to regain her composure. Thank you so much for your help, officer. She left the sentence hanging so he could finish his name. I didn't find him. Nolan did. The officer pointed with his thumb toward the room where the dogs had been. The overly serious man she met earlier in the day leaned against the doorway. If she didn't know what he was really like, his half-crooked grin would have charmed her. They were wandering around the medical center. I imagine they were looking for you. His answer melted the ice wall she formed to shield herself from him. Theodore looked back between Erin and Nolan several times. He inched his way to Nolan's side and sat at the man's feet. Nolan's smile broadened. We had a German shepherd that could have been this guy's brother in Afghanistan. He knelt and scratched Theodore's scruff. The last thing Erin needed was for Theodore to form an attachment to Nolan. The dog was smart enough to open the door and find where she worked. It would only be a matter of time before he sent it his way to Nolan's house. Erin addressed the police officer. Is it okay if I take them home, officer? Call me Wyatt. The officer grinned. I like dogs too. I'll keep that in mind, Erin chuckled. The end of her day was proving that beginnings weren't always the signs of how things worked. Let's go, guys. Erin motioned to leave the station. Stephen ran in circles and took his place at her feet. Theodore remained at Nolan's side. Erin tilted her head towards the door. That means you too, big guy. Come on, let's go home. Theodore wagged his tail, but refused to move from Nolan's side. Theo, come. Theo dropped his head and got on all fours. As he approached Erin, he threw several backwards glances toward Nolan. What had the man done to win her dog's affection? Erin asked Nolan, Did you feed him? Nolan held his hands in the air to show he had nothing in them. No, I brought him from the medical center. The wrinkle in the middle of his brow told her he was just as confused about the dog's behavior as her. Nolan walked to the door to hold it open for Erin and the dogs to pass through. Theo livened when he saw that Nolan was in front of the group. When they passed through the door, he waited for Nolan to follow them. A half grin altered Nolan's face. I wonder if your dog talked to my mother. What? He shoved his hands into his pockets. She's been bugging me all day to ask you out. Theo wagged his tail. With his ears perked and head tilted, the dog watched the conversation between Nolan and Erin. Erin's curiosity was piqued. "If you were, where would we go?" "If you have time, I could take you through to the park right now. It has an ice cream stand and benches." Theo and Stephen barked. In the morning, Erin had been worried about finding her dogs and fitting in with the new community. The end of the day brought her dogs home to her, an excursion to the park with the bossy, yet incredibly handsome security guard. The dog's eyes pleaded to go to the park, just for a short amount of time. Erin grinned to show that she was joking. "I have to get to work early, just in case security sends me to a different parking lot again." Hardy har ha. Nolan rolled his eyes and motioned to walk to where they parked. He hadn't taken 2 steps when Theodore pushed into Nolan's leg to nudge him closer to Erin. Nolan stopped and grinned. He reached over and played with the hair on Erin's temple. It had freed itself from her braid. "I get the feeling this is going to be a story that gets shared several times." A flutter tickled Erin's heart. She replied, "Me too."